The song you're about to hear has no instruments from the studio version. Let's talk about remakes. Hello everyone, Yasin here, and today we're gonna talk about remakes. Remake is basically a full cover. If you can play the instrument, you're playing the instrument. If you cannot, you're programming the instrument, but essentially you are creating the song from ground up. There is no rule set in stone. In my case, I leave the vocals because I'm not a singer, I don't have any training, and I don't think my voice is not even close for a cover yet, and because of that I always skip the vocal part. But for the remakes I always do everything. And the song you heard, Epica's Unleashed, it's a very important song for me. It's actually the 16th anniversary of the song, and I was working on that for a long time, but I had other opportunities came up, and instead of 15th anniversary, I am releasing it on 16th anniversary. I finished the remake, and today I want to talk about it. I'm going to give you all the details on how you can start, what are the exact steps, and also I'm going to give you a couple of tips while I am showing you the project. If you're ready, if you're subscribed, let's start. This is the project. Before looking at it, I will just fold all the big bosses so you can actually easily see them, and they're gonna be loading some libraries as we go because there's so many things thanks to the orchestration that we have. Yeah, and if I also fold the drums, that's what we have. We have drums, and I basically route all of the kit pieces. We have the bass, that's just a bass. And we have guitars, these are just guitars, and the whole orchestra section we're just gonna check and isolate. And finally we have Simone's vocals. Since I don't sing, and I actually can't sing, I should just plain say it, I cannot sing, and because of it I used Simone's vocals here. Does it making it less of a full cover? I don't know. Again, none of the rules are set in stone, so I said if I cannot sing, and I actually tried collaborating, but that didn't work in the time frame that I wanted. So because of that, I will just use Simone and her vocals. I said, and I only used that. So I would like to make this kind of, for everyone. So I should also explain how I, get the track. I always get the track and studio versions from YouTube, and to download I am using this app is Surfast Video Downloader, and after that I am using an amazing stem separator. It's actually not just a stem separator because there's so many features now. But when I was talking to them, and I should just talk about it as well, I am one of the partners now, and even though I wasn't a partner, I would definitely use it because it makes my life so easier. It is Moises, and let me open it for you. I already actually opened. Let me go back and you will see the main menu. Moises is actually the main app that I'm using for creating the remakes, and the reason is when there's a huge dense mix or simply too many instruments, the easiest thing you can do is actually to separate the track, so you can easily understand and transcribe them well. And then there's a vocal, which is, loud compared to the other instruments. You may not hear some details in the violins, or maybe there's a small guitar kind of underneath supporting the vocal melody. These are just, silly examples that I'm just thinking now, but essentially there could be so many things. And here my goal was to understand the instrumental, actually orchestration part of the things, like the actual symphonic part. For that reason, you will see that's where the song is. I load it, and after that I separate the instruments as vocals, drums. I isolated the guitars, as you can see. I also have the bass and strings and wind. So if we just isolate the strings, I'm just going to show you how easy it is when you have a beautiful tool like this. I isolate the strings. I will find a nice string heavy section. I can see it here, and we're just going to play. There's so many notes here, and of course your goal may not be 100% match this, just catch the vibe, get quite closer. In my case, it was always 90%, 95% thing, because I wanted to have a different technique and strings to have it much easier in the mixing, because it's a very, very, dense track. I mean, it's not a gentle track in the end, but still there are so many layers that are kind of clashing with each other if you think about it. And the same part, but for the wind instruments, let's hear what we have here. This string and wind helped me so much to identify some of the instruments that I have to program, but also, of course, the ear transcription was really, really important here, because if we only isolate strings, wind, and vocals, what you're gonna hear is basically, it's simply too much in terms of difference and in terms of loudness, that you can not always focus on one instrument. And I'm just gonna add drums, bass, and guitar slowly, and you will understand how quickly the other instruments are fading away. It's not actually fading away, but there's so much happening in that particular frequency range. It's gonna be harder and harder to understand what's actually being played.
My memories, now there's a haze pushing me sideways, and leaving me nothing to gain, taking me back, locking me cold in disparity.
Something just boomed up. I don't know what it is. Let me get all the things out, and that's how I got the drum parts. For example, just hear the drums to identify what's going on. Let's add the bass. Of course, you don't have to use noises. You can use another app for this, another service for this. There are so many services that are doing stem separation now, but not all of them are supporting, actually probably none of them supporting strings, winds, guitar solo separation, things like that. As far as I know, is only available in Moises. So for that reason, I use this one. I'm pretty happy with it, but I strongly encourage you, try anything that you can find. Maybe you cannot afford it, maybe you don't want to use it for some other reason. It's totally possible to do it, even just the whole song. If there are not many instrumentation or tricks basically happening, you can always just use the whole song and actively listen the instrument that you want to listen without noises, I had to focus on the bass and try not to lose it, so I would understand. Or maybe I would just do an EQ move. I carve out all the mids and try to separate the whole bass through that. There's so many tricks that you can use here, but essentially, considering all the DAWs have a stem separation now, I think you can definitely just, separate the drums, separate the vocals, and focus on what you have left. That being said, this is so far what I did. Even before starting the project, I tried to understand how the orchestration works, how the guitar works. I just learn and memorize the guitar parts here. So it's like a regular guitar cover. Since I'm a guitarist, for me that was the case at least. And after that, I am exporting the whole channel here. I have different formats, and after that I just leave the app at this point and we go back. Now again, before starting the project, I want to talk about one important thing, which is the sound choice. You may know or learn that the guitar player is using a certain guitar. For example, Isaac is using Gibson Les Pauls 6 and 7 string, and as far as I know, Mark is using Ibanez. I don't know the exact models, but I know that he's using Ibanez, so 6 and 7 string again. And when I check their 2012 interview, I learned that at the time Isaac was using a dual rectifier with a 4x12 Mesa cap, so that's actually the exact same sound I tried to get. I am going to show you what I use, and I try to match the sound as good as possible, but still have a small room for my creative purposes as well. Because not always you have to match the exact same guitar tone. Maybe in the mix it makes a lot of sense, but in isolation it's a bit different. That being said, I am going to walk you through the whole instrumentation as briefly as possible. This is not a mix tutorial, but I'm going to give you some small tips here. And we're gonna go with the order of energy, and which which instrument always have the energy. It's the drums. It's changing the energy, it's changing the rhythm. So I start with the drums. Before having any of this, I had the drums. By the way, if I show you here, oh sorry, yeah, this is the whole drum mix, and I basically could use a mixed kit, and actually the one I'm using is already possibly a candidate for a mixed kit, because there are options for this turbo, and turbo options are basically in the box mix done by Nolly, so it's top notch, but the sound is quite tight, and I don't think it's matching really well with Epica's drum sound and drum mix. For that reason, I just skipped that part and I mixed it myself. It also enabled me to have some augmentation, so I used, I think, overheads from the One Kit Wonder Architects, which is actually a mixed kit, so there was no option. That's why I didn't touch too much on the overheads part. As you see, there's only a small EQ movement and a gain. So that was the sound I was looking for. If you listen closely, you will realize that some of the crashes are panned differently. This is something I passed. As I was talking about the creative decisions. That is what I meant. I decided to keep the panning as it is because it's gonna change my sound, and I didn't like that. Because of that, I tried to have a similar brightness in the cymbal section, but I kept the panning as it is in the kit. So that's a small note for you. After By the way, if you don't know how to transcribe as fast as possible the drum parts, what you can do is always, let me do it like this, always start with the kick and after that add the snare, because they're easily separable. If you have transitions and tones, they're also really easily separable. You can definitely identify those very easily. If they're too fast, you can use different apps or your own DAW for slowing it down. I use an app called RiffStation. It's not used anymore, no one develops it, but you can find it online. I had it for years, and I am slowing down and understanding what to do with the drums that way. And after that, I think about a certain cymbal piece. For example, hi-hat. If the song is quite hi-hat heavy, there are so many hi-hat velocities, how open it is. Maybe you can put it as a last thing, it's quite possible. Or if you have a modern metal song, most of them don't have hi-hats, or they simply have so less hi-hats, so you can just easily listen and do that as well. But what this is gonna leave you is the crash, the China. If you have stacks, that's also possible. So these options, you just need to think about one git piece and focus on that. And after that, after some point, you will be able to pick up patterns, and with listening one section 1 or 2 times, you can easily identify most of the things here. That is a very nice way of ear transcribing and programming at the same time. After the drums, as a second step, I continue with the guitars. You may think it's bass, but no. When you didn't track guitar and you're a guitar player, of course you're gonna skip bass. What you're gonna do otherwise? So, for guitars, as I mentioned, the most important thing that you can do here is to understand what kind of sound you're looking for. In my case, let me show it to you. I used PRS Mark Holcomb 7-string, and since tone is amp and cab mostly, like 80% to 95%, it's pretty easy. If you have the right tuning, right intonation, you can track well. At that point you don't have to worry about too much, but you can definitely focus on which amp and cab is used. It's going to be really helpful for you to get the tone that you want that is matching to the song here. So this means that I used Dr. Drive instead of Tube Screamer. Actually, I should have used Tube Screamer here, which I even have, but I went with this one because this is Dr. Drive. It's a free plugin, you can just download it. It is capture of Precision Drive, an amazing pedal that is also allowing you to have a attack knob, an attack setting that you can basically choose. It's gonna help you how much high pass you're gonna have, and it's also a bit of compression, I believe. I'm not quite sure on that, but when you are setting this, it's basically the same idea with the Tube Screamer, but Tube Screamer in the pedal have a setting that is kind of set in stone or set in pedal. This one is basically something you can change and set. I usually don't go for A6 too much, but it helped me so much with the transition parts, the bridge parts. That's why I actually kept Precision Drive in this particular case. And since I don't have any neural DSP captures of dual rectifier, I had to go with something else. I always use neural stuff, but for this one I had no choice but changing my company of capture here. So I used this THU thanks to Slate Digital. Since I am a monthly subscriber to them, they have this Slate version of this particular plugin, and I put the recto here, I disabled the tube screamer, and with the cap section I actually have, how I'm opening this from settings, oh yeah, here. I used a cap that is kind of given to me more than a year ago. It is actually a Mesa 4x12, and this one is captured with SM57, and we have 65% blend. I don't know what is 2011, but I am assuming that is a condenser microphone, and it's basically matching 57. So 57 has most of the context, that's why it has a little bit more blend, a little bit more mix in the blend. That's what I was trying to say. And that was what I choose. I'm pretty sure if I, let me click here. Yeah, actually, if I try to check the cabinets here, I would find something that is matching, same or similar, but I don't want to go with this one because it's kind of limited since it's a Slate version. There are so many cabs that they're providing, but I don't have the premium version. I could just use another IR loader, but I also didn't want to do that. I wanted to have everything in the box, that's why I just passed it. So the rest is the delay and the EQ here. They're small stuff, and I dialed, the delay is off, but the EQ I basically dialed, just changed a little bit, but I don't remember why I did it. Usually I do stuff out of the box if I'm gonna do covers, because there's so many things to change. You can get so close in the box as well, but it's much easier for me to use my own mixing plugins. That being said, this is the whole thing. The rest is completely coming from the rhythm guitar bus, but this is not a mix video. I can only mention Heatwave, which is providing a nice saturation, and with that it's matching much better in the context. And I do the whole cover with the guitar. It's kind of a regular guitar cover thing. And after that, with the bass, I actually talked to Rob. I was actually playing the bass myself, but I decided to do it with a library, because even though you're a great guitar player, you can play bass like 20-30% like a bassist, maybe even not that, because they have a different energy, different timing, different articulation, different technique, and I wanted to respect that. And after trying to play it, the whole song, which I actually did but removed it in the last version, I shared that as a video, and Rob answered to me very kindly and said that I'm playing like a guitarist. He's right, and I play simply too many notes, because I was trying to play like the guitar parts, like matching. That's what I usually do with the gent, and that's most of the people do in the gent scene anyway. I just stopped after getting that nice comments, and I said, okay, I need to listen much closer, and with the noises again. I just isolated the track, and after that I just listened every single section. I programmed it with this nice library. It's Submission Audio Nocturnal Bass. It's the exact same bass Rob is using. He's using Dingwall now, but while making this song and playing the song live, he wasn't using it, so I chased him and the bass that I was using is this. It's a Harley Benton, but basically a Stingray copy, and I actually found the exact same guitar. Yeah, but I found the same thing as a library, so it was much better and convenient for me to do it with this. There's not much to talk about here. There is a mixer that I changed, but these are the settings. If you want, you can use it. It was just for this particular song. And I also added the humanization a little bit because I work on humanization myself as well, but it's always good having some sort of randomization in the box as well. So that was a bass. And finally, Orchestra. I am using one company only so far, and it is Nucleus. I mean, that's not the company. Company is Audio Imperia, but the product is Nucleus. And there are so many things here. It's an orchestral core, as you know, the name suggests, and it has the soloist parts, which is basically about basson, cello, flute, violin, like anything you need. They have the string sections with different parts. Basically, that they probably programmed it as parts. They're also penned really well, so you don't have to do anything basically. And they have the brass section. You can check the wood width section, and in my template I actually have almost all of them. If I don't remove because I don't need, in the template I have all of them. For example, I didn't use harp, but I have it. I didn't use marimba, but I have it. So if you create a template, and you can change the mixing here a little bit, you can change the reverb a little bit, create a different dynamic, because if you use everything in the box, it's not gonna help you. You will just sound like everybody else. And if you don't want that, you can definitely do a bit of experimentation. I actually didn't change much, so I sound like everybody else. But it was sounding really good, so I didn't touch it. So we have these very low notes that are actually programming the techniques. But besides that, I have most of the work done in the violin and violas part. Here I should mention that I basically find an easier way of actually programming these. It's a nice tip for you. If there's a Guitar Pro tab of this thing and someone actually worked on it, you can just export that as a MIDI file and change the MIDI channel to 1 if you're using Logic, because it's really important. And after that, you will have most of the notes covered with very stupid velocities, but you will be covered like 70%. In this song, I wasn't even covered 50% because I realized most of the notes were simply wrong, and the person who was writing it, I think, is a genius. He just did it like his own creative way. But I actually kept the busy parts as he wrote and changed the important sections and the techniques in those sections. For example, if we isolate the violin section, not the whole string, but just the violin. That was like a couple notes were timely wrong, but essentially it's the same thing. The technique was different though. I think it's the exact same technique, but how I set the velocities, I was a little bit more aggressive. If you check, most of them are above 100 here, except the transitions, because, you know, a violin player, a guitar player, they cannot put their full force, full strength in very fast, but also very present legatos. So there should be a balance. For that reason, I decreased here. And of course, I did a bit of an automation, except this part. This part is quite normal. Let me open the next section. Yeah. If I click. Yeah, okay. For these parts, I didn't actually work too much, I see. If we play again in isolation, let's this time just play the whole string section. Alternatively, and that's what I actually should do, I would just use Command and with the mouse click actually create some sort of line going down, because there's a different energy here, and of course while playing your volume is dropping down, it's less and less dynamic, and because of that I am drawing these velocity changes. Sorry, not velocity changes. It's just a simple modulation, but it's changing the energy and the dynamics of the instrument. I just drove something. Let's actually hear it. Yeah, it's definitely adding a bit of realism. And actually, I have more of that stuff, but unfortunately, I showed the part that I didn't do it. You definitely see that as well. So, for example, I have much more automation done in here, and there are simply parts that I missed because there are so many instruments, and I just lost the track of which one I did the automation, which one I didn't, but that was good to see for me as well. So the next part is basically we have cellis, and we have the violas that are supporting the violins in their own way. They're a little bit different. Let me isolate. With this song, it's gonna make much more sense. Let me play it again. So they're basically complementing each other, and while listening the string section separated with noises, the most problematic thing for me, since I have experience with orchestra stuff, I always add my own layers to my demos, but when it comes to an actual symphonic metal song or an actual orchestra piece, understanding which instrument has which kind of timbre and what's the main difference and how to change, how to program them, it's a completely different world. Don't force some sort of perfectionism on yourself. I did it and it's definitely not feeling good. I try to match as good as possible here. I love the song, I respect the song, I just try to go as close as possible because that's what I want to do. It's a full remake, right? Full cover. I challenge myself, but just trying to make it like 100% is beneficial in the long run. But if you constantly do it, you're just going to burn out. So I suggest try to be kind of close. The next thing would be, we don't have basically no double basses, only in the intro of the song. We have a brass section. And brass section is really, really good in the second part of the chorus. So I will isolate that one. This is what I got from the wind section in the separation. I try to ear transcribe it that way. I couldn't unmute it in time, so I'm just going to play the whole orchestra and the second part of the chorus. In terms of time, I didn't do a good job of creating humanization with the whole orchestra. I did it with violas because they have very cut short notes and it was much easier. But with violins, especially where there's a legato or where there's a sustained note, I actually didn't create a really nice humanization. And when you isolate it, you can hear it. But when it's in the context, let's listen again. So this part is also really, really important. Listen in the context as well, because that's how you understand if you did a very, very good job and you should stop, or you need more work to be done. Because if in the context it sounds like robot, it's going to sound like robot. Adding the other instrument is not going to help. That's what I think. That's why I always have the most energetic instruments first, drums, bass, guitars, and after that I just put these instruments and listen in context with a lot of, this or guitar is just occupying so much space. Same goes for drums. Bass is clashing with drums, so you may need a little bit of move, but in the end it's covering the low end. So with the double bass, maybe you can understand if there's an actual clashing will work. And maybe without bass, double bass will sound a little bit robotic, but in the context it's just gonna make sense, I should say. And that was the brass section. I just changed the topic a little bit on the other instrument because I think it's really important for all the remake parts. That's one of the tips that I can give you always. It's like mixing in context, but in a different window. It's in the production level. We have some woodwind instruments, but it was basically all about first to second chorus. There's a da 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 da. Let me actually play it for you. For that part, I used the woodwind because I felt like I heard that, and maybe it can be also one of Cohen's synth parts. I don't know, it was quite close to woodwind, so I just wanted to find the closest instrument possible. If there's a synth part, it's not going to be always possible for you to 100% match. I personally don't know too much about how to dial the perfect synth tone and perfect matching synth tone. I always start from the preset, find the closest sound and try to change it. Try to experiment in a way that it's gonna be closer to the song. It can be about the amount of reverb simply, or changing the oscillation type, and from that try to get closer, or maybe adding another octave to make it a little bit more full and energetic. And all this stuff is just going through the experimentation. That's actually one of the most important things of remakes. You are learning so much. And you are not just stuck in your own instrument, which is amazing. You basically understand how an orchestration and a symphonic section can support a whole song and create a different melody, a different story, a different energy. So for that reason, if there's a synth part, it's going to be really important for you to follow through it. and try to match and get closer. But again, just don't burn yourself. Just don't go to the burnout zone when you're doing that. That's really important. Next part is the percussion. And if you hear especially the intro, it's quite obvious. Oh, sorry. In percussion, I use timpani and taiko drums. And let's start with timpani, which you already heard. It's really important for the transition. That's why I don't have any samples or anything in this cover, because they use timpani and I use timpani. That's simply that. And you see that each chorus has its own small timpani risers, and that is a very nice transition, I believe. And in the tambourine, I mean, I said here tambourine, but here we have taiko drums. It's a little bit different, but the section is basically kind of a long bridge that you're hearing mostly vocals and percussion. Let me play it for you.
Time is just a concept and always the first thing to fade.
Here I find the sound of taiko drums the closest, and this is literally one of the instruments in Logic. They made it with sampler. I think they just get one or two samples here and change a lot of things. I didn't even touch this part. I went through the presets. I played them with my MIDI keyboard. I find a close sound. I just put it there, and I think it's very, very close. So that's why I really, really like it. That was actually all with percussion? Yeah, exactly. And finally, the choir part is unimportant because I got all the vocals. But if you want to hear it, of course I want to show it. Here in the breakdown we have this section. Let's start by hearing this one. You probably heard the instruments, the MIDI part that I just soloed as the last thing, very, very low, because the vocal separation was completely done with all of the vocals. Moises has the ability of separating the main vocal and the background vocal. If I wanted, and if I had a very, very good library with for choir, I could use that. But I didn't, and the reason is I don't have the library. That's a very, very important point. But also, I didn't want to lose the vocal quality here because there is simply so many layers that is adding energy. And just with this choir plugins that I have, it wouldn't be possible for me to create the same exact energy. And here we have ah and o, and just phrases. This is all random, and with this I cannot create those lyrics that's in the background said. And because of that, I put it a little bit down, like quite down, like minus 20.7 dB. It's basically, that doesn't exist. But what it does is actually really important. It's supporting the rest of the orchestra and blending into the vocals. That's why I just kept it. It's like the 1% you didn't know you needed. What you need to do is simply this in steps. You are gonna find a very high quality version of the song. Or if not, in YouTube you can just get the studio version, you can download it. You can feed it into your own JW or a Apex or a Moises or whatever separation tool that you have. If it works, it works. And after that, start by transcribing the drums. And for that, it would be really nice if you can find a nice drum sound, maybe pre-mixed, like a mixed kit basically. Or you can use one of the mixed kits that you can just, close the mixing part like I did. When I was actually transcribing the drums, there was nothing. It's just simply sounding amazing, but it's quite far from the song mix. And after transcribing, you can just change the sound as well. It's totally up to you. And after that, go for your main instrument if you want, because you have a backbone, which is the rhythm. And from there, you can just continue with your own instrument. In my case, that's guitar. And after that, I continued with the bass. And if you're not playing any of these instruments, you can still do that, like drums. And after that, bass, you have the backbone of the song. And after that, you can continue with guitar, if you have, of course. Or maybe some kind of synth layers and synth rhythms, if that exist in a song. That's also really, really good and part of the backbone of the song as well. And if you're the singer, you can just sing and have your demo kind of tracks here. I don't know how perfectionist you are with your own instrument. In my case, I tracked 2 times. One for having the backbone, and second time around having the actual tracking. And finally, I finished the rest of it, which are the supporting layers. As I mentioned, when you mute the orchestra, it's a regular melody. But it's still a song. It's really a nice song, and for that reason, having big parts first and getting perfect in time, or very, very close at the time in this long process, is really important. If you do it that way, I believe it's going to be much better for you, because you will have the motivation to continue. If you start from very small things like the choir first or the orchestra stuff first, and after that go back and add the drums, it's just gonna be complete at the end, and that's honestly something I don't like. Just to give you a small note, it's another tip that I can give to you for Ozone. I have the reference song here, and I listen the chorus, I don't listen the chorus, and listen one of the end sections after this. It's kind of a breakdown, but it's actually not a breakdown. It's kind of an interlude with 2 guitars. I listen that part, so I always have the reference in my mind and also here, and always have the song with you in the project, so you can always go back and freshen your ears. And while mixing, you're gonna hear the song so many times. Just give yourself some time, some breaks, so that you can always go back. Because when you have a different reference track, you're making a song with some people in a band, or your own song, but you have different references. You are making a Genty song, and your references Periphery, Invent Animate, Monuments, Tesseract, or other bands. You have something that you can try to get close, but it's not the exact same thing. If you are doing a remake, you definitely need breaks, because you are always hearing the same thing, and as you get closer and closer and closer, it's going to be much harder to understand those small nuances in terms of tone, in terms of mix, in terms of what kind of distortion, saturation you need to have with the guitar. Of course, I don't dive in that much, but if you're really that perfectionist, here I want to add odd time saturation. So it's too much, basically. One last tip here, definitely have breaks, because if you're like me and have the reference song here as well, you don't have a different reference, right? You are making a Gent track and your reference is Periphery. That's nice. Or Monuments, or Tesseract, or Polaris, or Invent Animate. It can be anything. But if you're covering and making a full remake of a band, and you're listening to the exact same song as a reference, at some point, and as you get closer, you're gonna just lose the track, and everything will sound the same after some point, even if it isn't. And you will dive in so many details, and you're gonna have so many wrong decisions that you have to revert if you actually can remember those. So I definitely suggest that have the track here, and also take a lot of breaks. In this video, we talked about how to do remakes. I broke down the project I have. It's Unleashed by Epica, and for every single instrument, I talk about why it's important. I give you some tips about how to find the correct sound and what's important. It wasn't a mixed video because every song is different, so covering those and creating a full remake will create so many different challenges that you need to face. And essentially, it's okay. All you need to do is to understand that you are not that, band, basically. What you're trying to do is to capture the essence, energy, and the story. So if you got all three of them, if you are hearing the same energy, you have the same excitement as you are listening the song, then it's actually done. Good job. Thank you so much for checking the video. I'm Yasin. I do metal and lo-fi. I do a lot of covers, reviews, and videos like this, kind of tutorial style or mixed breakdown style, something that help you to find your own sounds and create projects, demos, and your own songs. And of course, I have a couple videos and playlists for you. I'm putting it here, and I hope to see you on the next one.